Sam died in 1933.
He was 9?
And I was born in 28. And he died in April. And my birthday is in November. So when he died, I was 4 years old.
Yeah.
And I can still see this day, I still see him in that casket. That little brown suit on with the vest. Of course, a little small, wasn't a big casket.
Right.
And I remember we sat right behind Papa and Grandma.
Oh.
And I never will forget the look on their face. They wasn't crying, but me being 4 years old, and I could just, really about 4 and a half.
You could tell.
Oh, yeah. Well, see, that's the first time I'd ever seen anything like that.
Yeah.
And then Papa bought that place down there in 1932. And he didn't buy it in time to make a crop, but there was a guy living on it, and by the name of Smith. And he went ahead and farmed it in 32. And we still had 10 acres of cotton off of Pappaw's place, and Papa worked for Pappaw, plus 10 acres of cotton. And then along in September or October of 1933 is when we moved down there. And I would have been barely 5 or close to 5.
Yeah.
If it was before November, I would have still been 4.
Yeah.
And I remember all of that. I can remember stuff when I was 3 years old.
Yeah.
I do too.
You've told us that.
Not even.
I do too.
And I don't know whether you guys can or not, but I did.
I do. And a lot of my memories at 3 and 4 included you and Mama.
She said she remembers things from when she was that young too, but most of them that she remembers include you and Mama.
Taking me to reunions. Tell him.
And I can still, of course, I was, you know, Papa could work his ears. Regina was 4 or 5 years old, and he'd get in his lap, and he'd be holding her, and he'd work his ears, and I remember her just sitting there looking in his ears. And then finally, he'd keep working them. And she'd reach up there with her finger, and go slow and touch it.
Touch it.
And while she was touching it, he'd work it again.
Oh gosh. She'd be afraid.
She'd jerk her finger back. She's afraid of it.
Well, I've never seen anybody do that. He's just sitting there and they move. Nothing else moved. I don't know how he did it.
Well, I don't know if anybody that's ever done that. I don't know whether anybody can. And he could.
That's what I mean. I
His
know.
ears just go like that.
I've heard that before.
Yeah, I'd sit in his lap and turn toward him, and he'd be talking, probably to you or Bub or somebody or grandmother. He'd be talking, and I'd just be staring at his ears, and he'd come to a moment at the end of a sentence or something where he'd stop talking, and they'd move. He'd move them. Then he'd just keep on talking, and that amazed me.
He did that on purpose because he
Yeah.
He used to buy Regina candy corn.
knew. Aw.
And one time, she ate a big belly full of it. She said, "Granddaddy, I don't like that candy corn."
Her tummy was probably hurting. So, ask him, what was it like after they moved to the land he bought?
You were pretty young when you moved out there. But how much do you remember when you first moved out there?
How did your life change?
When you first moved, when you were young, do you remember very much about it?
Do I remember very much about it?
When you very first moved, you were awfully young.
Well, I remember.
Working? Picking
I
cotton?
remember the day we loaded the wagon.
Yeah.
A wagon with sideboard, full of about 2 mules. We loaded everything we had in that wagon. And I sat on the back end of the wagon up on the furniture on something. That's how I rode down there.
And you moved from where?
Where Papa and Grandma's house is, north of there, on the other side, kind of over the hill there. We lived in a house there. And the houses back then, it stood about 4 feet off the ground and had a porch. And the porch is about 4 feet off the ground.
Yeah.
And you had steps up on the porch to go in the house. And the chickens, in the summertime, the chickens stayed under the house where it's cool.
Yeah.
So what did you do when you
Sam
moved?
got killed. Me and Mama had walked down the road north further to Jesse and Josie's house
Uh-huh.
to visit Josie, and we was on our way back, and just before we got to the house, we could see somebody sitting on the front porch, sitting on the step. And here I am, 4 years old, but when we got there, it was Bert,
Oh, really?
and she was crying. Well, of course, her real name was Clara.
Right.
And
No one ever
she
calls
was
her
sitting
that.
there crying, and she had come up there from Papa's house, come up there to tell us.
Yeah.
I remember that just as plain. But I don't guess I really realized what actually happened until, but I knew it was something bad, her crying.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the first time. And then when I saw Sam in that casket, with the little clothes he had on, it's still there.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
they,
those memories don't go away.
they kept him in the house.
Probably. For the
They kept him in the house
I don't know about that.
till they buried him.
He was
See,
too little.
I don't know about that.
Mm.
He just remembers certain.
I'm sure they did, but even when Papa and Grandma died, they kept them in the house out there at the home place. Yeah, they kept them in that little southwest room. It's pretty small, but just before they carried her out, of course, the boys all carried her out. There was 6 boys. Just to write them out for a casket.
Right.
And before when the ambulance hearse come to get them, they'd all go in that bedroom where she was. And I don't know what they did, have prayer, I guess, I don't know. But they'd all go in there. All 13 of them in that little old room.
Yeah.
And when both of them died, that's where they put them, in that room. Kept them.
Yeah, he died about 10 years later, wasn't it? 10 years later? Your grandpa died?
What?
10 years later, he died?
Yeah.
She died first? Wasn't she younger?
She died in 46. Yeah, she was younger. And he died in 56.
Well, but in 46, I think I was still in high school here. Did we graduate in 47? I forgot. Either 46 or 47. I think it's 47. So I was still in high school when she died.
In Windom? Do you know what she died? What reason? You have to repeat it. He can't understand.
Do you know what she died of?
Cancer.
Cancer?
Yeah.
Breast cancer?
No. It was internal somewhere. Of course, back then, they didn't have all that chemo and all that stuff.
Right.
Well, she had 14 babies.
They just, all they could
Let's not
do
forget
was
that.
keep them easy till they died.
Yeah.
And then what did he die from?
Could have died of either.
Who did you tell me helped him with his meds, his medicine? Who did you tell me in the family that helped him with his medicine? You told me that one time.
Who helped him with his medicine?
Mm-hmm. You told me one time.
Well, Mom and Papa lived with him for a while, a year or two.
So they helped.
But I don't know what you're talking about, really. Who helped him with his medicine? I don't know. He gave himself shots.
You want something from Browns?